The shuttle was burning when Vance opened his eyes. He could hear the screams of metal twisting and breaking. He could smell smoke and something chemical that made his lungs hurt. Red emergency lights flashed above him, painting everything in the color of blood. Had been a soldier for 12 years. He had survived 3 wars and more close calls than he could count. His body knew what to do before his mind caught up. He unbuckled his harness and fell to the floor of the shuttle, which was now tilted at a sharp angle. The diplomatic mission to Prime had been simple: deliver documents, shake hands with alien officials, return home, no combat, no danger. That was what they had told him. They had been wrong. The pirate ships had come out of nowhere. 3 of them, fast and brutal, their weapons tearing through the shuttle's thin armor like paper. Remembered the pilot shouting. He remembered the explosion that threw him against the wall. After that, nothing until now. He crawled through the broken shuttle checking bodies. 17 people had been on board, diplomats, crew members, a young translator who had been excited about her first mission. All of them were dead, some from the attack, some from the crash. Found each of them and felt something cold settle in his chest. He was alone. The shuttle had crashed in a forest, not a forest like the ones on Earth, with brown trees and green leaves. This forest was made of crystal. Tall structures that looked like trees rose up toward a purple sky, their surfaces reflecting light in patterns that hurt his eyes. The ground was covered in something soft and blue that might have been moss or might have been something else entirely. Pulled himself out of the wreckage. His ribs screamed with pain. When he looked down, he saw blood soaking through his uniform on the left side. A piece of metal had cut him deep. He pressed his hand against the wound and gritted his teeth. His emergency beacon was crushed. His communication device was dead. His supplies were limited to what he could find in the scattered remains of the shuttle. He gathered what he could: water, food packets, a medical kit, a small knife. No weapons. This had been a diplomatic mission. They had not been allowed to carry guns. The sound of engines made him freeze. In the sky above the crystal forest, saw 3 shapes descending. The pirate ships. They were looking for survivors, or maybe they were looking for valuables. Either way, knew he could not stay here. He was about to run when he heard it. A small sound, a whimper, coming from beneath a piece of the shuttle's hull. Limped toward the sound, his heart beating fast. He pushed aside the metal sheet and found her. She was a child. Had seen pictures of during his mission briefing. They were humanoid with 2 arms and 2 legs, but their skin was different. It glowed. Soft light moved beneath their surface like living things. They had 4 eyes instead of 2, arranged in a diamond pattern on their faces. They were beautiful in a strange, alien way. This child was small, maybe 6 or 7 years old by human standards. Her skin was flickering with light in patterns that seemed wrong, unstable, like a broken lamp. Her 4 eyes were wide with fear. She was wearing robes made of fabric that seemed to contain actual light, threads of gold and silver woven together in patterns too complex for human hands to make. She was clearly important, a noble's daughter maybe, someone rich and powerful. But right now, she was just a scared little girl. Knelt down slowly, ignoring the pain in his side. He held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey, it's okay, you're safe now." The child did not understand his words, spoke a different language, one that humans had only begun to learn, but she understood his voice, the tone of it, the gentleness. Her flickering light steadied just a little. Heard the pirate ships getting closer. They would land soon. They would search the wreckage. If they found this child dressed in those expensive robes, they would take her. They would sell her to the highest bidder, or hold her for ransom, or do worse things that did not want to think about. He could run. He could leave her here and save himself. He was injured. He had no weapons. He did not even know this planet. Taking a child with him would slow him down, make noise, attract attention. but looked at those 4 frightened eyes, and he knew he could not do it. He had joined the military because he wanted to protect people, not governments, not territory, people. His mother had always said that the measure of a person was how they treated those who could not help them in return. This child could not help him. She could only slow him down and get him killed. He reached out his hand anyway. "Come on," he said. "We need to go, come with me." The child looked at his hand. Then she looked at his face. Something in his expression must have told her what she needed to know, because she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were small and warm, and her touch made his skin tingle slightly from the bioluminescence beneath her surface. Pulled her close and lifted her up. She was light, lighter than a human child her size would be. She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face against his shoulder. The pain in his side was getting worse. His vision was starting to blur at the edges, but he pushed forward into the crystal forest, away from the burning shuttle and the descending pirates. He did not know where he was going. He did not have a plan. He only knew that he had to keep moving, had to find shelter, had to protect this child until help came or until he could protect her no longer. The crystal trees closed around them, their surfaces catching the fatting light and scattering it into rainbows. Somewhere behind them heard the pirate ships landing. He heard voices shouting in a language he did not recognize. He held the child and moved deeper into the forest. He did not know her name. He did not know her people. He did not know if anyone would come looking for them or if they would die alone on this strange world. But she was a child, and she was afraid, and that was enough. Vance had survived 3 wars. He would survive this too, and so would she. He made that promise to himself as the purple sky darkened above them, and the first strange stars of Prime began to appear. He would keep her safe, no matter what it cost him. 3 days passed in the crystal forest. Lost track of time quickly. The sun on Prime moved differently than Earth's sun. It rose in the west and set in the north, and the days were longer than he was used to. He measured time by how tired he felt and how much his wound hurt. The wound was getting worse. He had used everything in the medical kit, bandages, antibiotics, painkillers, but the infection was spreading. Red lines crawled out from the cut like branches of an ugly tree. His skin was hot to the touch, and sometimes he shook so hard that he had to stop walking and lean against one of the crystal trees until the shaking passed. But he kept moving. The child, he had started calling her little light in his mind because of the way her skin glowed, followed him everywhere. She had learned to walk quietly, to hide when he told her to hide, to stay still when he listened for danger. She was smart, this little alien girl. She watched everything he did and tried to copy it. She had learned some human words. Safe was the first one, said it often, pointing at himself and then at her. Safe, you are safe. She repeated it back to him in her high, musical voice. Safe. Then she learned water and food, and she said his name often, tugging at his hand when she wanted his attention. It made him smile, even when smiling hurt. He learned some of her language too. Or rather, he learned her gestures, spoke with more than just words. Their skin patterns meant things. The way they moved their hands meant things. She taught him the gesture for thank you, a slow wave of the hand with fingers spread. She taught him the gesture for pressed together over the heart. She taught him the gesture for friend, touching the chest and then reaching toward the other person. She made that gesture often when she looked at him. Friend. The pirates did not give up. Heard their drones every few hours, buzzing through the crystal forest like angry insects. He learned to recognize the sound and find hiding spots quickly. Hollow spaces beneath fallen crystal trees, caves in the hillsides, thick patches of the blue moss that grew everywhere. Each time the drones passed, little light would press close to him, her light flickering with fear. Each time would hold her and whisper soft words until the sound faded away. On the 3rd night, they found a cave. It was not much of a cave, just a hole in a rocky hill, barely big enough for both of them. but it was hidden from above, and the entrance was small enough that could defend it if he had to. He gathered some of the blue moss to make a soft place for Little Light to sleep. He gave her the last of his food, a protein bar that she ate carefully, watching him the whole time. "You eat," she said in her broken human words. "Eat." "I'm not hungry," he lied. Outside, the rain started. It was not normal rain. The drops sizzled when they hit the ground and they smelled like chemicals. Acid rain, maybe. Had read that some planets had weather that could kill you. He was grateful for the cave. But the rain brought something else. The temperature dropped quickly. Little Light began to shiver, her light growing dim, pulled her close, sharing what little body heat he had. His own shivering was worse because of the fever. His body could not decide if it was hot or cold. And then Little Light began to cry. It started softly, small sounds that she tried to hide against his chest. But soon she was sobbing, her whole body shaking, her light flickering in wild patterns that had never seen before. He knew what this was. He had read about it in his mission briefing. Were different from humans. Their bodies were connected to their emotions in ways that human bodies were not. Strong feelings could make them sick. Extreme fear or sadness, held for too long, could actually kill them. Their light would go out and they would simply stop living. 3 days of terror. 3 days of running and hiding and not understanding what was happening. It was too much for a child. It was too much for anyone. Held her, but she kept crying. He tried speaking to her, but his words meant nothing. He rocked her back and forth like his mother used to rock him when he was small, but she did not calm down. He had nothing left to give her. No food, no medicine, no way to explain that everything would be okay. He could not even promise that it would be okay because he did not know if it would. He might die from this infection. The pirates might find them. They might starve or freeze or be killed by something in this alien forest that he did not even know existed. But humans had survived worse. Humans had always survived worse, not because they were strong or fast or had claws and fangs, but because they had learned to push back the darkness with small lights, with stories and songs and tiny acts of wonder. Remembered his grandfather, a farmer in Kansas on a planet called Earth in a life that seemed like a dream now. His grandfather had taught him many things: how to fix a broken engine, how to read the weather in the clouds, how to be kind even when it was hard, and how to blow bubbles. It had been a game when was a boy. His grandfather would sit on the porch in the evening and blow bubbles into the sunset. No soap needed if you did it right. Just moisture and patience and a certain way of breathing that turned air into something magical. Cupped his hands around his mouth. His lungs hurt. His whole body hurt. But he focused on the memory of his grandfather's voice, patient and warm. "Slow," his grandfather had said. "Gentle, let the air do the work." Exhaled. A bubble emerged from between his fingers. It was small and imperfect, wobbling in the dim light of the cave. But it caught Little Light's glow and reflected it back, turning into a tiny ball of soft color. The child's crying stopped. She stared at the bubble with all 4 of her eyes. Her mouth was open. Her light, still flickering, began to steady. The bubble drifted up and popped against the ceiling of the cave. Little Light made a sound, a small gasp, and then she looked at with an expression he understood perfectly, even across the gap between their species. "Do it again." Exhaled again. Another bubble. This one was larger and it floated toward Little Light before popping against her outstretched hand. She laughed, actually laughed, a sound like bells ringing, like water over stones. He kept going, bubble after bubble, until his vision swam and his chest ached. He made them dance with small breaths. He made them cluster together like tiny planets. He made them float around her head while she giggled and tried to catch them. Her light stabilized. The wild flickering stopped. Warm, soft patterns moved across her skin, patterns that somehow knew meant joy. "Orbs," she said, pointing at a bubble. "Orbs." Bubbles, he corrected her gently. They're called bubbles. Bub, she smiled at him, and her smile was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Bubbles, good. Outside, the acid rain hissed against the rocks. The pirates were still searching, was still dying. Nothing had really changed. But in that moment, in that small cave on an alien world, a human man made a child laugh with nothing but air and wonder. And that was enough. What did not see, what he could not have seen, was the figure standing at the edge of the cave's entrance, hidden by technology that bent light around her like water. The figure watched the bubbles rise. The figure watched the child laugh. The figure watched a dying stranger give his last strength to comfort a little girl he had no reason to protect. And in the figure's eyes, something changed forever. Empress had not slept in 3 days. She was the ruler of the Ascendancy, a civilization that stretched across 800 worlds. Billions of beings followed her laws. Thousands of ships carried her flag. She had power that most creatures in the galaxy could not even imagine. And none of it had helped her find her daughter. The kidnapping had been planned by traitors inside her own palace, trusted advisors who had been bought by enemies from beyond the Ascendancy's borders. They had taken little, her only child, her heir, her heart, and put her on a transport ship heading for pirate space. The plan had been to ransom her, or sell her, or use her as a weapon against the throne. Did not know which because she had killed the traitors before they could tell her everything. She had killed them with her own hands, something an empress was not supposed to do. She had not cared. Then came the crash. The pirates had attacked a human diplomatic shuttle by accident, thinking it was a merchant ship worth robbing. They had not known that was on a different ship nearby. They had not known that the explosion would damage her transport too, sending it spiraling down to the surface of Prime. By the time's forces arrived, both ships were scattered across the crystal forest in pieces. The pirates had landed search teams to recover whatever valuables they could find. And somewhere in that forest, her daughter was alone. Or so had thought. She had come herself against all protocol. Her advisors had begged her to stay safe, to let the military handle the search, but was done trusting others with her daughter's life. She wore a stealth suit that bent light around her body, making her invisible to eyes and sensors alike. She moved through the forest like a ghost, searching. She found the human first. He was stumbling through the crystal trees, badly wounded, carrying something in his arms. Followed him from a distance, curious and cautious. Humans were new to this part of the galaxy. The Ascendancy had no formal relations with them. They were considered primitive by most standards, short-lived, fragile, from a planet that should have killed them long ago. But this human was not acting primitive. He was protecting her daughter. Watched as he fed from his own supplies while eating nothing himself. She watched as he carried her when she was tired, even though each step clearly caused him pain. She watched as he hid her from the pirate drones, covering her body with his own, ready to die rather than let them find her. She did not understand. Meant nothing to him. He could not know she was a princess. Even if he did know, there would be no reward. The Ascendancy did not have relations with humans. He could not expect payment or favor or political advantage. He was simply protecting a child of a species he had never met, at the cost of his own life. Why? Followed them to the cave on the 3rd night. She stood in the darkness outside, watching through the rain, invisible and silent. She saw begin to cry. She saw the distress patterns in her daughter's light, patterns that made his heart stop. She knew what those patterns meant. She had seen them before in who were dying from grief. She was about to reveal herself, to rush into the cave and save her daughter, when the human did something strange. He cupped his hands around his mouth, and he breathed. Had studied hundreds of species. She knew the capabilities of beings from across the galaxy, but she had never seen anything like this. Small spheres of air and moisture emerged from the human's hands, floating upward, catching the dim light and turning it into color. Magic, that was her first thought. Some kind of magic she did not understand. But it was not magic, it was just human. A simple trick of breath and patience passed down from generation to generation. A way of creating beauty from nothing. Stop crying. Her light stabilized. She laughed, actually laughed, reaching for the floating spheres with joy on her face. And understood. She had studied humans in reports and data files. She knew their biology, their history, their wars and achievements, but she had never understood them. She had seen them as lesser beings, clever perhaps, but weak. Fragile creatures who had somehow stumbled into space without the natural advantages that other species had. Now she saw the truth. Humans had no claws, no venom, no armor, no bioluminescence or telepathy or regeneration. Evolution had given them almost nothing. So they had made something from nothing. They had invented kindness as a survival tool. They had created wonder as a weapon against despair. They had looked at a universe that wanted to kill them and decided to answer it with beauty. This human was dying. He knew he was dying. He had nothing left, no food, no medicine, no hope of rescue. And he had chosen to spend his final hours making a child laugh with bubbles made of breath. Not a human child, not a child who could ever repay him, just a child. Watched until the child fell asleep, her light soft and steady, her small body curled against the human's chest. She watched the human lean back against the cave wall, his breathing shallow, his skin pale with fever. He was still holding gently, carefully, like she was the most precious thing in the universe. To him, in that moment, she probably was. Could have taken her daughter then. She could have knocked the human unconscious, grabbed, and disappeared into the night. That would have been the smart choice, the safe choice, the choice her advisors would have wanted. Instead, she returned to her ship and called for medical teams. The human had earned more than abandonment. He had earned more than a quick death in a cave on a strange world. He had shown her something about his species that no report or data file had ever captured. He had shown her their heart. When morning came, returned to the cave. She disabled her stealth suit and let herself become visible. The human was awake, barely. His eyes were glazed with fever, but he still moved when he saw her, putting himself between her and the child. "You'll have to go through me," he said. His voice was weak, cracking, but his meaning was clear. Felt something she had not felt in a long time, respect. "Peace, human," she said in his language. She had learned it years ago out of curiosity. "I am not your enemy." The light-bending cloak fell away completely, revealing her true form. She stood tall, her bioluminescence blazing with patterns of royalty and power. She saw the child wake up behind the human. She saw his eyes go wide with recognition. "Mama," whispered. The human's legs gave out. He collapsed to the ground, but even as he fell, he tried to stay between and the child, protecting her to the last moment, protecting her even from her own mother, because he did not yet know who was. Knelt beside him. "I am Empress," she said softly, "and you have been protecting my daughter, the princess, heir to the ascendancy." She saw the confusion in his fevered eyes, the disbelief. "I didn't know," he managed to say. She was scared, she needed help." "Yes," said, "she did, and you gave it to her, a stranger, a member of a species we have never spoken to. You chose to die for my daughter rather than leave her behind." She reached out and touched his face gently. His skin was burning with fever. "I saw what you did last night," she continued. "The orbs of air, the way you made her laugh when she was dying from fear. You saved her life with nothing but breath and kindness." The human looked at her. His eyes were struggling to focus, but she saw something in them. Not pride, not expectation of reward, just relief. "She's safe?" he asked. "She is safe." "Good," he said. And then his eyes closed, and he fell unconscious in the arms of the most powerful being in 800 worlds. The medical ship arrived within the hour. had called for the best doctors in the ascendancy, specialists who had spent their lives studying alien biology, machines that could rebuild flesh and bone from almost nothing, technology that most civilizations would not develop for another 1,000 years. All of it for one human soldier who had refused to let a child die. Was barely alive when they put him in the healing chamber. The infection had spread through most of his body. His organs were beginning to fail. A human doctor would have said there was no hope, but doctors did not believe in giving up. They worked on him for 11 days. Visited often, standing at the window of the medical chamber, watching the machines do their work. Came with her every time. The child would press her small hands against the glass and watch the human floating in the healing fluid, her light flickering with worry. "We'll be okay," she asked every day. "The doctors are doing everything they can," would answer. But privately she was not sure. Human biology was strange. Their bodies healed slowly, broke easily, aged quickly. They lived such short lives, barely a century, sometimes less. It seemed almost cruel that such fragile creatures could feel so much, care so much, sacrifice so much. While slept, studied. She read every file the Ascendancy had on humans, their history, their wars, their art, their religions, their science. She read their literature, stories translated into poems and myths and children's tales. She watched recordings of their music, their dancing, their sports. And slowly, she began to understand. Humans knew they were fragile. They knew they were brief. Every human was born knowing that death was waiting, that their time was limited, that the universe was vast and cold and did not care about them. And they had responded to this knowledge not with despair, but with defiance. They built things that would outlast them. They loved fiercely because they knew love could end at any moment. They created beauty because they knew darkness was always close. They protected strangers because they knew that today's stranger might be tomorrow's friend. They had invented hope as a survival strategy. Had ruled the Ascendancy for 200 years. She had met thousands of species. She had thought she understood the galaxy and all its variations of life. She had been wrong. On the 12th day, opened his eyes. The doctors told immediately. She was in a council meeting when the message came, a meeting about how to respond to the pirate attack, how to punish those responsible, how to strengthen the Ascendancy's borders. Important matters, matters that an Empress should prioritize. She left immediately. When she arrived at the medical chamber, was already there. The child had somehow escaped her caretakers and made her way to the room alone. She was sitting on the edge of his bed, showing him something with her hands cupped together. Stopped at the door and watched. Breathed into her cupped hands, slow and careful, the way had shown her. A small bubble emerged, not made of air like human bubbles, but made of bioluminescent fluid. It glowed like a tiny star, floating upward, filling the room with soft light. Laughed. It was a weak laugh, tired and rough, but it was real. "You learned," he said. "I practiced," said proudly. "Every day I showed everyone, the servants, the guards, mother, everyone." "That's amazing," little light beamed at him. Her bioluminescence shifted into patterns of pure happiness, patterns that had not seen on her daughter's face since before the kidnapping. Stepped into the room. Tried to sit up when he saw her. The Empress. He still was not used to that idea. This glowing alien woman who commanded 800 worlds was the mother of the child he had carried through a forest while dying. "Please," said, gesturing for him to relax. "You are still healing." "I feel better," said. "Much better, actually, better than I should." That was true. The doctors had not just healed his wound. They had improved him, strengthened his bones, enhanced his immune system, fixed small damages that had accumulated over years of military service. He would live longer now, be healthier. The doctors had called it a gift, payment for what he had done. Sat in a chair beside his bed. Stayed where she was, still making small glowing bubbles, humming happily to herself. Commander Vance said, "I need to thank you properly, what you did for my daughter. There are no words in any language I know that are sufficient." "You don't need to thank me," said. "Anyone would have done the same." Shook her head slowly. "No, they would not have. I have seen many beings from many species, Commander. Most of them would have left a child of another kind to die. Some would have used her as a bargaining chip. Some would have helped only if they expected reward. What you did, protecting her, comforting her, giving her your food and your strength, that is not common. That is rare beyond measure." Did not know what to say. He looked at, who was now trying to make multiple bubbles at once, her tongue sticking out in concentration. "She's a good kid," he said finally. "She deserved better than what happened to her." "Yes," agreed, "she did, and you gave it to her." She paused. "I watched you, Commander, that night in the cave. I saw what you did with the bubbles. I saw you choose to spend your dying moments giving joy to a child you did not know." Felt his face grow warm. He had not known he was being observed. The thought was strange, even embarrassing. "It was just a trick," he said. "Something my grandfather taught me. It wasn't anything special." "You are wrong." His voice was firm. "It was the most special thing I have witnessed in 200 years of rule. Your people have no natural way to create light or beauty from your bodies, so you invented one, from breath and water and memory, from love passed down through generations." She leaned forward. "I have studied your species since that night, Commander. I have read your histories and your stories. I understand now why you have spread so far, so fast, despite your fragility. You are not mighty because you are strong. You are mighty because you are kind, because you look at darkness and answer it with wonder." Thought about this. He thought about Earth, about humanity's long and complicated history, the wars, the cruelty, the times when humans had been anything but kind. "We're not perfect," he said. "We've done terrible things too." "Yes," said, "every species has. But when I look at a species, I do not judge them by their worst moments. I judge them by what they choose when no one is watching, when there is no reward, when it would be easier to walk away." She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cool and smooth, and her bioluminescence flickered where their skin touched. "You chose to save my daughter, Commander. You chose kindness over survival, and that tells me everything I need to know about humanity." Looked up from her bubbles. "Is my friend," she announced. He made the dark less scary. Smiled at her daughter. Then she looked back with eyes that held the weight of centuries. "Commander Vance," she said formally, "I am in your debt. The Ascendancy is in your debt. Name your price. Anything within my power to give, I will give." Looked at the Empress. He looked at, still happily making bubbles, her light warm and steady. He thought about what he could ask for. Wealth, power, a ship of his own, anything. "Keep her safe," he said. "That's all I want, just keep her safe." Stared at him for a long moment. Then she bowed her head, an empress bowing to a soldier, and made the gesture for deep respect. "It will be done," she said, "and more, so much more than you know." The announcement came 1 month after woke from his healing sleep. Every screen in the Ascendancy carried the same message. Every ship received the same broadcast. 800 worlds stopped what they were doing to listen to their Empress speak. "Citizens of the Ascendancy," said, standing before cameras in her throne room. "For 6,000 years we have kept ourselves apart from other species. We believed we had nothing to learn from them. We believed that isolation was strength. Today, I tell you that we were wrong." Behind her, 2 figures stood in places of honor. One was Princess, wearing formal robes, her light steady and bright. The other was Commander Vance, dressed in a new uniform, but not quite human either. Something in between, something new. "1 month ago, my daughter was taken by traitors and nearly lost forever. She was saved by a human, not a soldier following orders, not a diplomat seeking advantage. A stranger who found a frightened child and chose to protect her, even at the cost of his own life." paused. Across 800 worlds, billions of beings leaned closer to their screens. I watched this human comfort my daughter with nothing but kindness and breath. I watched him create small miracles from air and patience, ancient tricks passed down through generations of his people. I watched him choose love over survival, wonder over despair, hope over fear. She turned and looked at. Humans are not what we thought they were. They are not primitive or weak. They are the species that evolved kindness as a weapon against the dark. They are the people who invented hope when the universe gave them none. They are the civilization that answers cruelty with compassion and meets death with defiance. She raised her hand in a formal gesture, one that now knew meant a declaration of historic importance. By my authority as Empress, I am opening formal relations between the Ascendancy and the Human Federation. Full diplomatic ties, trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchange programs. We will share our technology. We will share our knowledge. We will build something together that neither of us could build alone. The broadcast ended, but the effects rippled outward for years. Stayed on Prime as the first human ambassador. It was not a job he had ever trained for or expected, but had asked him personally, and he could not refuse her. More importantly, had asked him, and he could not refuse her either. "You have to stay," the princess had said, tugging at his hand the way she always did. "You have to teach more people about bubbles, and I want to learn more human things. Please, please." He had laughed and agreed. The years that followed were strange and wonderful, learned customs and taught human ones. He attended formal events where beings from dozens of species stared at him with curiosity and confusion. He answered thousands of questions about humanity, their history, their art, their strange habit of creating beauty from nothing. And always there were the bubbles. Glowing bubbles became famous throughout the Ascendancy. She performed them at state events, at children's festivals, at gatherings where beings from across the galaxy came to see this new form of art. She taught others how to do it. She taught aliens from other species. She made it a symbol of the new alliance, a reminder that sometimes the smallest gifts could bridge the largest gaps. Watched her grow from a frightened child into a confident young woman. He watched her take on more responsibilities, preparing for the day when she would become Empress herself. He was proud of her in ways he could not express. The alliance grew. Human ships traveled to worlds. Scholars visited human universities. Technologies were shared. Cultures mixed. The two species, so different in form and history, discovered that they had more in common than anyone had expected. Both knew what it meant to face a universe that did not care about them. Both had learned to create light in darkness. Both understood that kindness was not weakness, it was the greatest strength of all. Other species noticed. Other alliances formed. Within 50 years, what had started as a simple agreement between two civilizations had grown into something much larger. The human alliance became the heart of a new network of species, all working together, all protecting each other. They called it the Concordat of Sentient Peoples. Historians would later argue about why it worked. Some said it was economics. Some said it was military necessity. Some said it was simply the right time in galactic history for such a thing to happen. But those who knew the truth, those who had access to the private archives of the throne, knew better. They knew it had started in a cave during a storm, with a dying man and a frightened child. They knew it had started with bubbles. Vance lived for 97 years, far longer than most humans of his generation. The medical enhancements had given him extra decades of life, decades he spent building bridges between worlds, raising a new generation of diplomats and peacemakers, watching the alliance he had accidentally created grow into something that would outlast him by. When he died, he was surrounded by friends from a dozen species. Was there, now Empress herself, holding his hand the way she had held it in that crystal forest so many years ago. Her light flickered with sorrow, but also with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything, for the bubbles, for hope, for showing us what humans really are." Smiled. He was very tired, but he was not afraid. He had lived a good life. He had made a difference. He had kept his promise to protect her, and she had grown into someone who would protect entire worlds. "Keep making bubbles," he said. His voice was weak, but his eyes were warm. "Keep pushing back the dark." "I will," promised, "forever." He closed his eyes. In the records of the Ascendancy, Vance is remembered as the father of the Alliance. Statues of him stand on hundreds of worlds. Children learn his story in schools. His name is spoken with respect by beings he never met, on planets he never visited. But the thing people remember most is not his diplomacy or his courage or his years of service. It is the image of a dying human soldier, huddled in a cave with an alien child blowing bubbles to make her laugh. That image is displayed in museums across the galaxy. It is printed in textbooks and painted on murals. It is the symbol of what humanity represents, the stubborn insistence that even in the darkest moments, there is always room for wonder. The universe is vast and cold and full of dangers. Species rise and fall. Empires grow and crumble. Stars are born and die. But kindness endures. Hope survives. And sometimes when everything seems lost, a small magic is enough to change everything. That is the lesson Vance taught the galaxy. That is the gift humanity gave to the stars. And it all started with a breath, and a bubble, and a choice to answer darkness with light.